Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Found in Interpretation podcast. Once again, I'm one of your co-hosts, Alain Breton, and I'm here with Brian. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited for today's podcast.
Yes, we all are, because we're here with Jean-Francois Lymburner. How are you doing, Jean-Francois?
Hi, guys. Pretty good. So I'm also very thrilled. Congratulations for your podcast. Episode 17, 18, 19, I'm not too sure. But since the last fall of 2024, you guys have been busy. It's a full-time job to track all your good content. So
Yeah, we're not busy enough, right? All right, let's kick it. So I'm going to read Jean-Francois' bio so we get to know him a little bit. So then we'll get to the most important stuff. So Jean-Francois is actually the CEO of a Public Services and Procurement of Canada's Translation Bureau. In other words, the CEO of the Translation Bureau, maybe it's a short version here. And he has a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from l'École Polytechnique de Montréal and a certificate in public sector leadership and governance from the University of Ottawa. But most importantly, for us interpreters, I think that being at the top of the Translation Bureau, I've received so many questions from interpreters, from people who say, oh, wow, people don't know exactly who you are. They know about the Translation Bureau, or maybe they don't really know what's going on and how does it work, etc. So we're here to solve that mystery. So first of all, Jean-Francois, can you give us an overview of the Translation Bureau?
Yeah, I'll be pleased. I mean, there's many opportunity for me to talk about the Translation Bureau, whether it's in Parliament or it's in many conferences. The linguistic industry or the language industry around the world is quite confined in the sense that in a year, I became the CEO in January 2024. So I'm celebrating year one.
Congratulations.
It's been a learning journey, and I'm still in full learning mode, like everybody in their new assignment. But that being said, being able to go at conferences like Gala, World Speak, a couple of other places, you start to feel and see the same people. And from a parliament standpoint, there's a few parliament in the world that we can work with where they have multiple languages going on. So I'm quite pleased that the Translation Bureau is well known. Our reputation around the world is very good. I think there's a couple of tools that might got us popular, like Termium and a couple of others. But here at home in Canada, what we do, we are essentially providing translation services, English, French, to international languages, of course, and Indigenous languages more and more to the public service. There's about 100 department and agency that can tap in our services. Number-wise, we do around close to 400 million words a year from a translation standpoint, and close to 60,000 interpretation hours in many shape and form as well. So that's quite large. So in Canada, it kind of position us as the largest linguistic service provider. But as Alain mentioned, it's a public service organization. So I'm not a fully private enterprise, although the Translation Bureau is a special operating agency within the government. So I'm within the portfolio of Public Service and Procurement Canada, which is great. It's a great department. But we're optional. So department can still use our services depending on what they need, but it's not a mandate. It's not mandatory. So we do have about 1,300 people at the Translation Bureau. A part of it is through the translation. The other part is the interpretation. And let's not forget our terminologists. So they're great people. They're sometime in the back. I'm sure that they're kind of getting more and more limelight these days with AI and other things. And we do have sign languages people as well, both ASL and Quebec Sign Language. So I hope it's a quick overview, but I'm sure you're going to have tons of great questions. So I'll stop there on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great overview. A lot of people, when they think Translation Bureau, they think only translation, but it's great that you're also emphasizing that you have terminologists, that you have interpreters. I remember when Termium came up, it was a godsend at the time. It was all the interpreters.
CD version?
Yes, the CD version. Yes, it was, and you weren't allowed to make copies. It was copywritten.
But was there a paywall at the time? I was not there around. Was there? I think there was. You had to subscribe to it. So
yeah, and I'm actually from I'm actually from the days when each department had their own book of terminology. So I used to go to like Gatineau and get like the Parks Canada terminology or like the Transport Canada terminology, like the very thick book to help us out with translation and interpretation. But yeah, when I went to CD, it was a game changer. And now, yeah, it's still available online, I imagine.
Yeah, it's available online. We've got millions of hits, and as I mentioned, when we travel around the world in conference or anything, we're trying to limit that for sure. But there's people, students would say, "Oh, I've done my PhD in France, and I've used Termium, and I have other people." So it seems to be a known, a good Canadian product that has been well known around the world.
So it's still updated regularly?
Yeah, it is. It is. And of course, things are moving fast. I heard sometime that people found other alternatives that they can connect to other sources easier at their fingertip. Yeah, all these tools that they can get a quick definition or a meaning of a word using all kinds of platform that they either on their phone or on their laptop. But yes, Termium is still alive and kicking, and we're really trying to keep it up to date as much as practical. But language, as you know, I mean, it evolves so quickly. So we're constantly working with them to see if there's any possibility that we can clarify terminology, both English, French, and it's still.
There's also Spanish in Termium, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
But
it is.
speaking of evolution, we're talking about terminology. When it comes to translation, but this is found in interpretation. So I'd like to switch to interpretation a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I have no issues. I think Brian hit it on the nail. The branding of the translation bureau, but when you pick a word, I mean, I understand we're celebrating 90 years of existence. We grew under different names along the years. I think translation at the time was good, but you're absolutely right. We're providing language services. And frankly, the way I see the business and where I come from is definitely content, providing the information that you need when you need it, and be efficient at it. And more, what I see, it's a really convergence of language, text, video. It's all being interchanged super rapidly. And absolutely, I think Translation Bureau, unless we're there to say, hey, we do interpretation as well and sign language, maybe it would be more appropriate to say linguistic services. But you know how difficult it is for brandings and things. So it is true that translation is not the only thing that we do.
Yeah.
So the first time, and maybe I'll get a bit personal here, but the first time Jean-Francois and I met together in person was at Laval University when there was a new micro program being launched with Mr. Louis Jolicoeur. And we met in person, and I remember
at a press conference, right?
At a press conference, that's right. At the press conference back in September, October, refresh my mind.
At the beginning of our podcast.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. It was,
we're just getting warmed up.
Episode number 4 when we had Louis Jolicoeur with us. And the reason why there's a brand new program, brand new interpretation program, I should say, starting is because there seems to be a shortage of interpreters. That's what I heard during the press conference. Can you tell us more about what's going on?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So first of all, the Laval announcement was a micro program. It's been in the works for a lot of time. And when I came in, I really, as quickly as I could, went over there to meet with the university people to see if we could get that moving. I think it was important for us to land. I know we both have different timelines in what we do, but I found that there was a good opportunity. And also I was a bit surprised when I came in to see that we had 2 universities in Canada providing interpretation services, Glendon and Ottawa. So by no means it only needs to be one in Quebec, but still I was surprised, right, with the population and the amount of good university and bilingualism around. So I was surprised. So I was basically started by asking questions. I quickly found that there was a good desire. You mentioned Professor Jolicoeur. I was very impressed about, first of all, his knowledge on interpretation. So I was able to tap into his knowledge there. And yes, we landed that. It was great, your podcast with Dr. Marie-Hélène Girard. I think she's wonderful. It's great that you got her on your podcast. Congratulations for that. I really like evidence-based decision-making and data. And That's kind of the engineer side of my brain that's kind of getting excited. She's doing a study, so I hope that all your listeners are gonna fill the survey to really try to demystify or move factoids from facts and
So do you have
understanding
data?
the shortage.
Do you have data on the shortage? Because
mean,
if you're pushing for a program and we hear a shortage here and there,
yeah.
there's AI at our
Yeah.
doorstep.
Yeah.
So do you have some data?
Yeah, I mean, there's shortage of it's not a one size fits all, right? So we know that government, and it's probably the same in the population in Canada. Content is growing like that. Whatever you look at any studies, the number of not terabytes, even more than terabytes produced per day in government is on the rise. So the very slight percentages of that is being translated and available in both official languages, let alone the Indigenous languages and other languages. So if you take that lens, you'll see that there's an opportunity to do more. In some of your podcasts, you spoke about the arrival of Zoom and other platform where they. I come from my assignment before to the Translation Bureau. I was involved in workplace transformation and future of work. Been a big fan of cutting the cords as quickly as we could on our phone, getting our laptop, being mobile, being where you need to be when you need to be equipped. But you didn't get any language services in a regular meeting. You had to be in a conference or a big town hall, or because there was only that amount of interpreter available, and that's why. So I think there's a lot of content that could benefit from more interpretation. When you look at the U.S. and even in Canada with Banff, a lot of climate events that are happening and the need to contact the population super fast, and it's a more diverse population everywhere. So when you see like FEMA in the United States or even in Banff, press conference being popped up extremely quickly, need to communicate to be pulled out. We do that at the Translation Bureau with our colleague from Environment Canada, where we have to pull out weather warnings under a minute or under 2 minutes, right? So, and now we need to talk to the population. So, all that to say that there is a shortage. I mean, for us, we assign all our interpreters at the bureau. We do have about below 100 public servants, so interpreters that are public servants like me. But we cannot. I mean, we work super closely with the freelancers and the private sector as well. For that, departments are sometimes we have to say no because we simply don't have the capacity to support an event. And they go.
So how does a freelancer get in touch with you to work? What is the process here? Because most of the people who listen to us are actually freelancers. So I'm sure everybody's quite curious right now.
Yeah. I mean, like government, I mean, sometimes it takes time to put up contracts. You're all familiar with the rules that are out there, and I don't want to get into kind of not the bureaucracy, but you have to meet all kinds of. For us, doing business with government, I understand we have good services at my department that help small business to interact, because sometimes there's a lot of paperwork. You need to comply with security requirements and other things. So it's fairly easy to identify the contract that are and call out and request for proposal.
So where would for example, like an interpreting agency, where would they go to be able to work for the government, and as opposed to like a freelancer, where would they have to go to be able to work for the government?
I mean, frankly, procurement is not my full background, but what I can tell you is that I don't think there's limitation for companies or freelancer. It happens that your business is well known to be mostly freelancer, and it's not only in Canada. I interact and I deal with Laik and them, and I see what they do in Europe, and it's the type of business. But more and more, I see companies that are getting involved as well in other countries and here in Canada, and my colleagues in other department when we have to say no. And here, just to make sure, we're doing conference interpreting mainly. But there's other type of interpretation that I get requests on weekly basis. People doing. I heard that you guys, I think, worked in the judicial domain, so we do provide interpreter at the Supreme Court. But there's there's other courts, and we get requests for that community interpretation, and again, any kinds of event. People they know us, so they will reach out. So sometimes we can provide, and sometimes we cannot. But there's a request for proposal. It's a cycle. When the contract is up, there's another contract that it's going to hit the street or request for proposal, and it's not it's not limited to either you're a freelancer or you're a company. It's pretty much we're a service organization, so we're looking for service providers.
Now, how do you add to your roster of full-time employees? Like, do you for interpretation? I'm assuming you have to pass a federal government exam. Is there any other way to get in as a freelancer? Is that basically the only way?
Yeah, so I think in what you say, when I mentioned with Alain that I was in Laval University, I think we collectively have a common issue here, which is to attract young Canadians in your field, in our field. And I looked at the numbers of all the universities and the decline in the language programs. In your podcast, you talk a lot about the integration of technology, and how
you really listen to our podcast.
Yeah, of course. I hope it's my job.
You're paying attention. I'm glad. Yeah,
to be tuned in to what you guys are doing. But it's a long answer, but it's still, to me, it's like a pipeline, right? So if it's drying up, no offense, but if I look at the demographic data in the federal government, but especially in our field, a lot of our freelancer, Brian, I don't know if you know, they're former translation bureau employees. So, thinking that they could become a public servant, they've already, they've been public servant and very good ones, and now they're in a different chapter of their life. So initially, for me, it's to make sure that we get a good feed from different program. We're not done. Laval was kind of one check in my little list, but I'm pushing hard on many other fronts to try to add a similar program or maybe more complex program. Laval is a micro program, but maybe if we catch like 10, 15 students that are interested, that could get it.
I don't know if you were in the translation bureau back. When I graduated Laval University back in 2006 or 7 now, I think 7. I remember in my cohort, we were 30 of us roughly graduated.
In translation, right?
In translation, that's right, in translation. And I think that like 80% of my fellow graduates left for Ottawa and worked for the federal government. Are you talking about, and I'm not sure if it's the same thing today, but are you talking about the same amount of, you really want to create a pipeline for students to graduate in order to fill positions in Ottawa the same way it was done for translation?
Yes. If you look back in the years, I believe in the 80s, I spoke to all my predecessors, CEOs, and they told me that they were student loans and they were scholarships from cradle to grave almost. They were getting under the kind of umbrella of the Translation Bureau as they were starting and along their career, and they were doing some work experience in the Bureau, and they got a job at the end. This is how things were in the 80s. Now, we're launching back some scholarship as well to try to stimulate not only to start, but to finish. So that's a delicate balancing act, and funding is an issue all the time. So we have to be very creative to attract people. But the reason why I said 15 is sometimes I get people, they think there's hundreds and thousands of people that I'm in the very low number, but it's still something that we need to bring in and bring on board. And I think you will admit with me, and I'm not one of yours in terms of your specialties, you don't become a good interpreter on day one. I mean, you definitely need some flight hours to collect and get and learn in many type of settings. So it's to find the right balance between your experience, your very good ones, and those that are starting and they're getting experience. Even if in the program it's very good, I'm sure that the program that you were part of, Alain and Brian, were very good. But to me, it's on day one, it's not. So it's to have a little amount. The government of Canada needs strategic capacity and interpretation. That's my view. I mean, people can disagree with me, but technology can fail. There's many reasons why we need to set up certain conference or security level. So we need to have good interpreter that are government employees and they're willing to get to work when need be. But that doesn't mean that we cannot complement and work closely with all their freelancer when it's possible. So, but to me, if it's drying up, that's an issue. I mean, you have a 15-year-old and I have 2 teenagers at home. My 15-year-old, she's in communication, multimedia kind of thing. will I recommend her to go in an interpretation career or a translation career? That is kind of a good question. I mean, I'm interested in your views because
Well,
sometimes I hear people, talking about oh no, AI is there, so I don't fully agree with that, but still, it is out there. So we need to do collective messaging to attract students. That's my
well,
view.
And I think,
sorry, Brian, but I just wanted to say,
And I have
if
two
you're
dogs,
talking,
so dogs are barking, but that's sorry about that.
I want to, don't worry.
maybe I can erase it post production. So, but in last episode broadcasted, we had Helen Campbell, and we actually had this discussion where she was saying that she would not recommend, let's say, someone who's like say 25, and she wouldn't say become an interpreter because she doesn't
Or don't
think
make it
that
your career, yeah.
oh, then made it your career. That's right, because AI is coming, technology will change everything, and we're all going to lose our jobs. So, from your point of view, there's still hope, I would say, because even last night, I got a text from a young interpreter who watched the episode with Helen, and he wrote me last night, and he said, should I change my career? I'm young, I've got a young family. Should I change my career? What would you tell him?
Yeah, I think that's the point of also renewing those programs to integrate more technology into it. That's why I said the post-localization era. That if you read in the world of linguistic and language industry, where voice, text, subtitlings are all kind of merging together. So I've attended. I see now quickly you can put. You can change the language of a video with a pretty good synchronization. So there's all those tools that are coming in. At the end, you need someone who understands the message, and they could definitely assess if it's the right intent and not. So for me, it's the same in translation. A lot of people are telling me, "Oh, I throw that into Google Translate. This is good enough." I mean, no. You need a professional to go over. We talk about human in the loop. We mainly do conference interpreting. I know you do there's other type of interpreting out there. I don't want to talk about these business. They might be use cases where technology could play a bigger role, but in our case, it's really conference. I spoke to UN, European Parliament, other countries. They have multiple official languages. For us, it's in our law in Canada, so it's key. So that's to me, it's pretty steady. Will there be change? Of course, everybody. I mean, AI is not only changing interpretation and translation. Yes, everybody understand what we do because it's language. But if you're an engineer, if you're anything, any kind of work, your process and your workflows are going to be changed by technology. Was like that I started in the 90s doing automation courses and things like that. And there's new technology coming in, but there's a human at the end. Our output is for human. So I do see a value. Do I have a crystal ball for everything, how that's going to happen? And do I have clients that feel that make this problem go away or you're expensive? I get that. So I know that, but it's sign language is another one where, it's not always fully accessible or cheap for people to set up those services, but we believe in them. So I see a future.
And coming back to the human component, because we do address AI in almost every episode that we have, because that's kind of top of mind for everybody. But is there a federal government policy at all, like in terms of like we need to use human interpreters instead of using say like software for interpretation or that kind of thing? Because your standards for translation for interpretation are quite high. So relying then on say like AI for interpretation, would that be something that would be frowned upon, or is there a policy where like the federal government needs to only use humans in order to keep the quality, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's not entrenched in a policy the way you describe it. Like it needs to be human. For us, it needs to be of equal quality, and we know how difficult and important the work of interpreters are, and that's why we're making everything we can to support them on anything they need in order to accomplish their task. And definitely the human is part of what we do now. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, if you're in a unit somewhere in Canada and you have someone who comes to talk to your briefing, or you have a presentation that is only in one languages, and you can access some services that otherwise will not be available. This is where I see a growth in the use of technology. I mean, Zoom, when it came in, now MS Team is adding new feature, and they're trying to catch up. There's other platform. If you're in our business, there's platform that are geared to what we do that are also enhancing the capability. And I'm sure that, like me, you got someone who came back from a trip in Europe and say, "Hey, I use my phone to talk to someone in Greece, and have you seen this? And are you aware of that?" So it's becoming at the in everybody's pocket. There's a possibility to either understand language and or to share. You're at a doctor in Italy and you want to talk about what you have. You can definitely use it. So there's going to be that coming into play. But when it's time, when we mean business at the bureau and we're supporting a committee, or we're doing the question period in Parliament, this is where we've put our best. I keep saying to my staff, airplanes have been flying by themselves for decades, and you still have a pilot in the cockpit, and you would not want to have your Uncle Bob in the cockpit just because he feels that he's a YouTube airplane pilot, right? You want someone with credential.
He's got 10,000 hours on a flight simulator. It's
probably right. So we all feel and we all say hi to the crew when we jump. So so that's where I am. That being an industrial engineer by trade, it's the integration of the human with technology, and I'm still feel that I'm right into the middle of it in what we're talking about.
So I'm trying to see in a very concrete way how it works behind the scenes. So imagine that there's a Chinese delegation that comes to Canada, and you need to have interpreters. But we know that Mandarin is not an official language in Canada. So how would your bureau find a certified or qualified interpreter? Or is there an exam for Mandarin as well? So how does that work for that?
So we do have them, and we do offer the services in many languages. Some are government employee, and you have to follow the political cycle and what's going on in the world as well about the availability. Sometime for a couple of years, you don't have the opportunity to do a certain language because something is going on and there's less opportunity. So to keep them, we can reassign people to other tasks. Sometimes they're also able to do other type of interpretation, but we do offer
you're talking about
services.
in-house employees would take care
maybe,
of that.
Yeah, okay. Some, but still, we can definitely leverage the private sector for that. I mean, the certification, of course, is not the same than for English and French. I think you mentioned it as well. So, but it is a service that we offer, and more and more trying to establish a steady stream of service in Indigenous languages in Canada. And there's many of those, and it's there's a lot of challenges to bring interpreter in Ottawa at a certain time of the year, and there's coming from a remote communities, and there's travel involved, and it's not simple, but we definitely want to offer like English, French, any other languages required, but including and putting an emphasis on Indigenous languages as well.
And when you're saying at the beginning of when we were talking about the numbers and the structure of the Translation Bureau, you said there was about 100 interpreters, more or less. Is that in every language? English, French, Spanish, Mandarin? Or
is it's a total. I would say it could
okay.
range between 60, 70, and sometimes, we're aspiring to get more. And that's why I was at Laval trying to get a newcomer coming in as well. So that just what I say below 100 is just for everybody's mind to be clear that it's not thousands of interpreter. And I would say in a freelancer, everybody knows each other. It's a pretty
what's the average?
What's the average?
Yes.
What's the average age? How old are they? Like on average, like people like us in their 40s?
Quite surprised
like
that
a bit
there's been a reduction in the age at the bureau. So there's more and more younger people coming in recently. When I've looked at the curve in the past 20 years, I mentioned I don't have the data for a freelancer because it's not they're not our employees. But I mean, I know these people. So
two of them.
It's also you can see that it's not that the workforce is not will have a kind of a renewal challenge. I believe like a lot of workforce in Canada, we're looking for architects in certain location and other things sometimes. So there's shortage in many area. I think in interpretation, it's especially true. It's difficult. You need to be on the ball. You're listening. You're talking at the same time. You need to master technology more and more. Conditions sometimes are difficult depending on the type of work that you do. And again, there's also, as we spoke about, the future. Is that going to be exactly the way it is? I think it's going to continue to evolve, but we have to be deliberate and do collectively. We have common message. That's why I'm here. I think we should provide.
Well, you're
and share.
talking about the interpreting community here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm amazed by the amount of how the type of work that they do. And we do have some videos on our website for the Translation Bureau. And when you see the interpreter in a day video, wow. And we have some events that we do, or some of the deputy ministers had the opportunity to be in a booth once and to listen to what you guys are doing. And it's always a significant event that they remember and they talk to me about. So it is, first of all, it's cool.
Have you tried? Have you been in the booth to try to interpret?
Once I was in a charity campaign, and there was a bit of a try, and I was also had to after that I had to spell words backwards in front of a crowd, and I say it was not a very good memory, neither the interpretation, but maybe I'll go at it in a different way now.
Well, we'll make you an honorary interpreter just for being on this podcast. I don't know if we have the power to do so, but consider it
the power combined.
It's just amazing how you can do that, and I'm admiring them for course, and I'm learning about their challenges, because there are some challenges, and
absolutely
we're trying to.
And do you prioritize, like, say some of the meetings say that are of higher importance? Those are the ones that get the full-time interpreters, and then the ones that are maybe like not as crucial in terms of terminology, then maybe they go to the public sector or the private sector. Sorry, like how does it get allocated in a certain way, or is it first come first serve?
Yeah, the bar is pretty high at the bureau, especially for French and English, and so we get all of our interpreters that are certified are awesome and good. But I mean, like in the translation business, I mean, in your podcast you talk about the cost per minute, or in your business, and in the translation is cost per word. That's pretty much the structure underneath everything. And more the world of interpretation and translation is going on a risk-based approach. And
what does that mean?
It's for example, Alain, if you got a document that you're sending to us, right, and my only answer is going to be X amount of cents per words or something like that, or it's going to be an amount of cents per minute. You know very well the conditions are very well, the stress involved. What is this document for you? Of course, we can spend a lot of time and bring quality very high, but at the end, some clients are coming in to say, okay, this is very important for me. This is my website, this is my mission, or this is a very key annual board member conference that we want to be like good and excellent and be perfect. And sometimes there's other cases where there's maybe less need for get your best. So we're trying to make sure that our clients are able to express that. And that's in our dialogue to understand the risk level. And it's easier to explain on the translation front, but we just did some document, very important document, either a law or a report or a commission report. And, of course, we're making sure that everything is checked along the way and there's no mistake. Sometimes I have a client to say, this is not very important, but we really love to offer it. So then we can maybe spend a little bit less time on it. So that's kind of the risk-based approach. And for assignment, of course, we have, the question period, and we have all those committees that we want to prioritize. And sometimes we simply don't have enough bodies to cover this additional committee that comes in or something. So we have to reprioritize with our clients and explain to them that we have a limited amount of capacity.
Okay, I see. And then a lot of our viewers are also wondering about how to become employees as interpreter employees for the federal government. Is the process basically you pass the federal government exam and then you become an employee for the federal government, or what are the steps, or are there any different steps that need to be taken or can be taken?
I mean, they're all part of the translator. It's called a TR. That is the classification in government. I don't want to get too specific on government lingo here, but it is a classification that
there's acronyms for everything.
Only the Translation Bureau can hire TRs, and interpreters are part of them. And there's all kinds of levels. So depending on the case, depending on what they're looking for, although I must say that even in my own chain of command, and I do have bosses I report to and I talk, sometimes people commonly think that a translator can do some interpretation and an interpreter can do translation. So I spend a lot of time trying to say, well, they have the same classification, but those are two very different business. Like not all engineers are the same.
Yeah, the brain works very differently.
Very differently, but I'm always miffed to say, oh, okay, you have a bit of excess people there. Can you move them over here and do this? It works in a conference room setting, but in the real life, it's not like that it works. So it's more complex, but we're trying to hire that. There's no limitation, Brian. Somebody who's very experienced could get to a certain level. Somebody starting could get to a lower level. It depends on the needs of the teams and how people are staffing. But trying to bring some younger one is that they start. It's something that I feel that every business, you want to have a good feed of newcomers, a good balance between your more experienced people so they can support one another, they can coach one another.
But if you want to become an employee, or if you want to work, let's say like a freelancer with the translation bureau, these are two different pathways, or we both have to go through the accreditation exam. So there's a bit of a confusion here for us when it comes to let's say, okay, I'll give an example.
I might not be the best one to answer that.
Okay, so you're not aware of the process.
Well, yes, I am aware of the process per se, but I mean, there are certain things where we're asking for certified, and we're certifying people regardless if they're a government employee or freelancer. That exam is available to everyone, not only those with courses and everything. So it's pretty open in terms of the exam process. And after that, depending on the vehicle and the task at hand, that of course it's going to be required for us to assign our interpreter where we need to be. And like I said, mostly right now, we're not able to support other type of interpretation, like community interpretation. We do in Government of Canada. We have Passport Office, we have Immigration, we have many other colleagues that are calling us all the time to see if we can support, and they might have other needs where other people, and we can explain to them what we do, but we don't have enough capacity to cover all the interpretation needs. I want to be very clear here that we know it's limited, and that's why we're trying. I believe the Bureau has a kind of a responsibility to a certain extent in Canada to push and to be not the backbone, but be an important player in language in Canada. So that's why we want to send those messages to students that there is a career out there, and it not only at the Translation Bureau. I mean, you talk to Marie-Hélène, Dr. Girard, in your other podcast, she was talking about how difficult it is in the judicial to find translator. And you ask people if there's shortage in translator, and 90% of them will say, no. But yes, there are, depending on the specialties. We do at the Bureau do science pieces that are very complex and a lot more specialized documentation that we need to do. So, but interpretation, it's a worldwide. In your field, you hear it, worldwide shortage of interpreter. I'm not making this up. It is the situation now.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm just wondering too, because like you had mentioned at the beginning that you cover about 100 different departments throughout the government, but you only have about 100 interpreters total, with including all the different languages. So like, what if everybody needs interpreters? Then you need 100 booths with three
one interpreter per
department.
department. One interpreter per department.
So you're at 300 interpreters in a day.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I was talking about the public servant, but there's an addition numbers of freelancer. But as I told you, they're not in the thousands. We're still in the 100 business, right? You know them all probably by name and what school they went to.
Got their number too,
of course, right? So it's still limited. So that's why, I mean, you spoke about remote as well, right? So RSI is coming in. So for some people, I mean, I'm surprised when I talk to students, teachers, interpreters at the Bureau and outside. I found that some interpreters, they like the remote setting because they have more control over their screen. They can, depending on the type of audio system and computer that you have at home, some prefer that. Which is an issue for us. Yes. But for us, we need to be on the hill, right? So we need to show up on the hill at the COVID when COVID hits, the interpreters were one of the few people in Parliament. They never left the scene. They were there, and there were nobody in the
So the
meeting room.
politicians were home, but the interpreters were there.
Everybody. A lot of workers were there, but for us, our equipment and the things, so they remained available at that time. And I mean, Microsoft Teams and Zoom was not even a thing in 2019. Now we all master them, and you guys are on Rivers, whatever tool you're using for today. That's been a gigantic step. Being in myself in the workplace renewal business, we were trying to push our story to say, you don't need an office because you're not there all the time. You travel, you move, and people were not really interested. And all of a sudden, we became like, okay, we understand. So it was an opportunity at the end in a crisis, but a lot of things change, especially in our field.
Yes, absolutely.
So, so we're getting soon to the end of our podcast.
It goes by fast.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, really fast, and it's quite actually fascinating. So just to sum things up, because before, so a lot of young interpreters right now are clearly concerned. I mean, older interpreters who already have their own market, they already have their own clients, and everything is running smoothly. But just as a final word, and I want to leave on a positive note, how would you reassure young interpreters who are starting their career or who might actually be interested in working for you guys like full-time at the Translation Bureau? So what's the message you would send them?
Yeah, for the message, I'm not sure. I mean, I was hoping that in our podcast today, you would also tell me what are your main concerns, because I really learned from it. It's really moving quite quickly the way people operate and work. So to talk about the challenges and the trends that we see in 2025, we are at the Bureau. I don't have a crystal ball, but we have demands in our business, and we're trying to now work with universities to, of course, change a little bit how the training is being done. We spoke about remote, the need of a cabin or not, and we provide interpreters to teach the recruits. So for me, there is definitely an opportunity. Communication is going to remain a key component of every businesses. I think your message needs to be clearer and quicker and shorter than ever. And at the end, it's about interaction, and it's all about people. So I think we are in the mix. We're in the heart of this. We're in the eye of the storm. I mean, everywhere we go in government, you have a need for us to be there. Either you need to translate a document, you need to edit a video, you need to make sure you have an interpreter in the room. And I think that will continue to prevail. Now, what's the scale of it? And, if there's other things that you guys see in the other aspect of the business, because I'm pretty limited in the sense that government is a specific type of environment, but I'm sure that demand is quite high as outside government as well. And that those messages, that's why I want to have common message that interpreters, organization like the Bureau, but others, private sectors, companies, association. I'm trying to set up a table where we can share our experiences. I think it's quite small in Canada. So getting us together and talking and making sure that we're providing common messages and not contradict one another, I think will be very key. So for me, it's about that. It's not about just the Bureau saying I cannot predict everything, but obviously we need to remain at the top of our game. For me, change is part of every business that I've been into. So it's going to continue. Where are you on the value chain is interesting because, podcasts like that can be listening on. I walk my dog. I listen to them on Spotify. Others are watching it. Some people now very quickly can extract text out of our podcast. So in only one little piece of communication material, you can serve. Some people like to listen books. I'm trying, but I'm still reading books a lot. So
me too.
But I know that there's more and more people that talk to me. Have you switched to listening books, JF? And I've tried, but so that's all involving the work that we do, whether it's interpreting.
Well, but you were asking about. This podcast. We don't usually share too much of our thoughts because we like to extract as much as we can from our guests. No. But I can actually. But if you're really asking, and I'm really on you about when I'm listening to you, I'm really on you at certain points because personally, I don't have, like you said, a crystal ball. But personally, I'm not concerned. It's true that AI is here. I mean, it's coming, it's at our doorstep, but there's a big difference between, let's say, using my phone when I'm traveling to try to understand something in a professional setting, first of all. But in order to become professional, you need to go to school. You need to have certifications. You need to, let's say, you can do the micro program, a master's degree, or anything else that might enhance your knowledge. Because if you look at translation, for instance, I remember 15 years ago when Google Translate first appeared, people said, okay, it's the end of translation. And there's still a lot of work in translation today, although there's all of these tools available. It just means that our profession is bound to change. Change is normal. I think we have to not only diversify, but become specialist. And I think that the key here is to say, if you are an interpreter out there and you're not sure about what's going to happen, find a specialty, something you love, preferably. May that be in the judicial field, may that be in medicine, may that be in community service, may that be in the hospital setting, whatever. But if you find your own specialty, then you'll be able to move forward and have a great career, regardless of the technological change. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that also, like, coming back to the medical thing, that's why my mom became a medical interpreter at hospitals. She originally wanted to be a doctor, but for gender reasons and the country she lived in, she was not allowed to go to med school. So becoming a medical interpreter was an awesome alternative for her. And she was able to still, like, learn medicine thanks to that. In a lot of different ways. And I think that the positive thing that I would leave this podcast with is that you had mentioned that there's going to be that Université de Laval's micro program is going to be just one of the many things that you're going to be exploring. And
stay tuned. Stay tuned. I
yes.
hope that we'll be able to bring closer the interpreters in the translation program, because that's basically our approach at Laval, right? So it's now bring this into something, because we have a lot of employees at the translation bureau from Université Laval. They're in the translation field, but now we're really putting an anchor there as well on interpretation. That would be a goal.
And it's good that you're that you have that on top of Glendon College, because Glendon College does have the different languages as well. And you had mentioned there's a need for different languages, and then University of Ottawa has its program as well, and that's not at risk because you're actually going in to try to find more opportunities for interpreters, which is a great thing to hear. I love hearing about people being educated in something that they want to do in the future, and this is a great opportunity for them, and that's really a good note to finish on. I think for new interpreters is that there's going to be a lot of new opportunities that Jean-Francois and others are working on to try to bring this profession into what it should be, which is like having a lot of different people with a lot of different skills providing services for people who absolutely need it and can't get by without it, because you absolutely need both official languages in this country as well as all the other ones that you had mentioned, Jean-Francois. And you had mentioned it's the 90th anniversary of the Bureau of Translation.
It's the 90th, and you just ignite a couple of thoughts in my head. I know it's podcast, so maybe I can just compliment.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Being a large organization, it provided me the opportunity to talk to other CEOs of large translation bureau. We're like the 17 largest in the world, so it's still giving me access. And the message is pretty much the same. How they see some reduction in their traditional translation services, like the translation just of a document. There's a growth in sign languages and interpretation. I was in most of them that I've been able to talk to, so it's not only us talking about that. I'm surprised that a lot of them are still providing services through phone. I thought it was gone. You probably know that more than me, but some companies, in a very quick time frame, you need an interpretation. They redirect, but it's through phone still. So when I talk about the possibilities, they're not all in a kind of a conference setting in a booth, but it's still a interpretation. So I just want to add that nuance there, that it is it's not something that when we talk about crystal ball, Alain, and it's just like the shortage, or at least the services they're in growth in the United States as well. Not only the fully bilingual country. When I talk to some colleagues in the States, they all have the high demand for interpretation services. So that's kind of the message I would like to leave you on.
And are you doing a gala or something for your 90th anniversary? And if
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
can we
I
expect
mean, that's good.
tickets?
Oh, so you're well
And I
connected
guess
too. So Gala, I mean, the world of language is coming to Canada. So for me, it's amazing to see that they're going to be in Montreal. I know that World Speak as well. For those of you who were there in Glendon last year, that's another event that's going to be close to Gala. So I hope that we're all going to come united as a language industry in Canada. It's going to be a good opportunity. I was at Gala last year in Valence, and I was amazed to see that there was other JF Lymburner living the same movie that I'm living, because they were the same issues, discussion, health and safety, making sure that this kind of rapid use of technology, remote was something that was discussed, and the lag time as well between some of the technology is very impressive. So there's very technical presentation, others that are more like within the how we organize work and the what the industry is looking for. Of course, there are some vendors, buyers. There's many different group, and being alone was not enough. But I know that this year, because it's in Montreal, I hope that we'll have the opportunity to have people that couldn't travel or couldn't be there. So that's a great opportunity. We'll deliver a presentation on how we seeing the technology coming into the work.
What's the name of the event?
Gala.
Gala.
Yeah, it's globalization. We talk about translation and interpretation. We also got the word localization in our language services business that being used. So that's the annual conference in localization, and it's worldwide, and it's interesting. You can talk about standards, ISO. There's many topics. I think for everybody interested in the business, that's pretty good.
We'll have to leave the link in the description below.
Yes. When is the what dates do you have?
I think it's 14, 15 April of this year,
Oh, it's
maybe I'm
coming
wrong.
soon.
I'm not part of the organization.
No,
but,
that's okay.
No, but
then
just
there's
talking. We're talking.
You'll have the World Speak session. It's organized by the Association in Canada of Business and Languages. So that's going to be the day after. So if my memory is correct, it might be on the 16th. But we can confirm that, and you can maybe add a link to
I found it.
these event. Yes, and it's in the.
It says Gala's 15th annual conference will be held April 13th to 15th in the beautiful city of Montreal, Quebec.
And it's not often, because I looked at the back in my predecessor CEOs. I think they kind of switched between Europe and America, but they've been like Dublin, I saw, Valence, Brussels. And so it's going to be once in a decade maybe that you have that type of, everybody will be here in Montreal or in Canada. And I think we should not be shy about our positioning, because in English and French, I think we have the best of the best in the world. And our data shows that as well. And we've been because it's a law in Canada, and we have 2 official languages. There's not that many countries that you can tap in. I mean, you talk to Europe, it's great. They have 37 languages at the European Parliament that they deal with. So it's a smaller scale, more languages. But for French and English, we're out there. We're at the top, and we should be very proud of that.
Excellent. Sounds like Founded Interpretation is going on tour in Montreal in April.
I can connect you if you want. So thank you very much, guys. You've been awesome, and I'm going to continue to listen to you. I'm a Spotify user of your podcast, but now I'm going to learn more YouTube. I saw a few things as I prepared for this one, but
Awesome.
Continue your good work. If there's anything that we can do to share messages or clarify a few things that I've got wrong in that podcast, I'm more than happy to.
No,
we'll have you back if that
absolutely.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Je souhaite un bon vendredi.
Well, like, share, and subscribe. By the way, I would like to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for being so open, transparent. And it's really awesome. I really love the attitude. It's really fun, and we'll definitely have you again for another podcast. So everyone, thank you very much for listening. Brian, Jean-Francois, we'll see each other for another episode of Founded Interpretation Podcast. Once again, like, share, and subscribe to every video. It's very important for us, because then we get even more popular and we have to spread the word. All right, guys, see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.